Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Things are a mess, as usual. But we'll get them fixed. How is everybody? Welcome to Archival Adventures. At the start of... What is this, year 5? Oh boy. Okay, and I'm not sure what's going on with the music right now. I usually try to go for instrumental only, but when I'm filtering to instrumental only, it's giving me like no tracks. So right now, I don't even know which channel it's playing. So, you know, I'll explore that as the year proceeds. But for now, I would like more than one track. So let me choose a genre here. We'll say chill. And if we don't like it, we can change it. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to Archival Adventures for the very beginning of 2025. This is a once a week program that I do on Twitch. The music is loud. Okay. Let me adjust. I will bump the music down. So once a week on Wednesdays. And I've been doing this since January 6th of 2021. And this is the show where we go back in time by looking at historical documents. If you're new here or unfamiliar for any reason, I am Anthony Wright de Hernandez, aka Rogan27, and I am the Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech. And this program I do from Special Collections and University Archives here on campus. You're invited into my office for a couple of hours. This year we're trying something new, and I'm starting the stream an hour later than I have in years previous. So, you know, we'll see how that goes. I'm trying to not lose all of my equipment off the side. This stream started as an experiment, and it's still experimental. I'm always working on making changes and upgrades, and hopefully sometime this spring I will upgrade the document camera so that we're able to have something that focuses a little bit more reliably and zooms in and out easier. So we'll see how that goes. It's also freezing cold in my office, and I have a space heater aimed at my legs. So if I suddenly start to feel like I'm overheating, just remind me. And if you weren't aware, I stream this to 2 channels at the same time. We are live now on the University Libraries channel, which is twitch.tv/VTUL Studios, as well as on my personal channel, twitch.tv/Rogan27. So yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I should remember in order to have things work properly. Who knows? Anyway, let me see who's here. The chat should be shared, so regardless of which channel you're on, you should be able to see all of the posts from anybody. I do see Key Squared. Thank you so much for the 42-month resubscription. That is amazing. Lord Portico, welcome. Hannah, it's good to see you. Matt M33, hello, hello. I believe captions are functional and operational on both channels, so let me know if for some reason that's not happening. We're back, or at least half is back. The other half is front. Key Squared. Oh, let's see. Oh yeah. Yeah, 4 years worth, and everything is up on the library's YouTube. There's also a playlist on my personal YouTube that just plays the videos from the library's YouTube. So yeah, all of that is there. 4 more years. 4 more years. Temporary command for as long as we cover the USS Dacotah. Awesome! That is good to know. Check out the YouTube for all the VODs about the USS Dacotah. Oh, that's great. And I am making a separate playlist for the Dakota stuff. Not to be confused with the chant for when you're throwing someone into a small body of water. Your 4 meters. You squared. You're funny. Okay. I also have plans for trying to get it so that those pun points can be awarded on Wednesdays as well, which requires me to have a bot that works on a Mac and get it installed. So I'm exploring that. Also, you can of course see a part of my hand is green screening out, and that is because I have I have a bandage. Some of you know that I had some minor surgery on my hand last week. And the bandage I'm wearing happens to just be a color that will green screen. So anyway, that should not affect the stream. But yes, indeed, we should move along and get to the content because I'm excited. But first, on this stream, we look at historical documents. And because we're looking at historical stuffs, it's important to pay attention to the history of where I am, the place that actually owns the stuffs. So, Virginia Tech acknowledges that we live and work on the Tutelo and Monacan people's homeland, and we recognize their continued relationships with their lands and waterways. We further acknowledge that the Morrill Land Grant College Act of 1862 enabled the Commonwealth of Virginia to finance and found Virginia Tech through the forced removal of native nations from their lands in California and other areas in the West. Virginia Tech acknowledges that its Blacksburg campus sits partly on land that was previously the site of the Smithfield and Solitude plantations, owned by members of the Preston family. Between the 1770s and the 1860s, the Prestons and other local white families that owned parcels of what became Virginia Tech also owned hundreds of enslaved people. Enslaved black people generated resources that financed Virginia Tech's predecessor institution, the Preston and Olin Institute, and they also worked on the construction of its building. If you want the longer versions of that, the link is there. So, sorry, I'm just seeing this. I didn't know the salute emote. I was just noticing it, and I had a suspicion I knew whose emote it was before I hovered over it, and I was right. So, okay. So, what we're looking at today is the Phillip Peltz Journal. It's back! We last visited the journal of Phillip Peltz, chief engineer of the USS Dacotah in the Union Navy during the American Civil War, in July. And the plan, like, it was the first thing we looked at last year. And I will note there were some audio issues in like I think the first 2 episodes of the Peltz Journal stuff last year. But we were looking at it once a month because it was just amazing. Originally, it was supposed to be just a thing that we looked at once. And then it turned out to just be really cool and a fun experience to look at. And so once a month, we were looking at it. And then middle of the year last year, my boss asked if I knew of anything that should go to the conservator to have a professional conservator work on it. And for that, we generally want something that could use a little bit of restoration work, but also is fairly unique and could see a lot of use, and just this seemed to fit all the criteria. And so I suggested it, and then it was just, basically that day it went to the conservator. And so that's usually about a 6-month process or so. And so we just didn't have access to it for the last half of the year. It's back from the conservator. We will look at it and look at what the conservators did. And then we will return to actually reading the journal, which is the content is interesting. But for those of you who maybe are unfamiliar, I will do a little bit of intro as to what is this journal? Why are we looking at it? Also, hi, Iron Trout. Thank you. Yeah, the facial fuzz is there. Okay. Who was Phillip Peltz? Well, Phillip Peltz was the chief engineer of the USS Dacotah for the Union Navy during the American Civil War. It's a very short biographical note there. I've actually discovered some more information. And I know his brother was I think drafted. I'm not sure. His brother joined the Union forces as a medical officer. In some of the entries that we'll get to, maybe not this week, but possibly next week. I don't remember exactly how far ahead it is. I've been working on the transcription. But the Dacotah was a steel sloop that served in the U.S. Navy during the Civil War. It was part of the North Atlantic blockade, stationed relatively, pretty routinely near Hampton Roads, Virginia. And so there's just been a lot of really interesting things. Like, one of the very first things that came up in the journal was the confrontation between the USS Monitor and the CSS Virginia, the first 2 ironclads. There was President Abraham Lincoln came on board and was traveling, kind of low key, but came on board, and they sailed down to watch the Union Air Force, which consisted of hot air balloons, fly up to do reconnaissance on Confederate forces. And he notes in his journal that he heard that Lincoln went up in the balloon. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it's a primary source who says he's able to confirm that he heard that happened, which is not primary. We just know that possibly Abraham Lincoln went up in one of the balloons, because it's secondhand information from a primary source. So that's not primary information. Anyway, steel sloop is an odd-sounding ship type. There can't have been many of them. Oh, yes, there was. There were. A secondary otherwise known as a secondary source. Congratulations, Matt M33, on being randomly selected as a VIP for the stream. I actually have a document. Because I have been... it came with, when we bought it, it came with a transcription that is full of small errors, and so I've been working on correcting it. And for my own reference, looks like last year in March, primary source once removed. Exactly. I found this. I'm going to share it here in a second. So I just need to move it so that I can. Because unfortunately, it is not in the browser. And so I just need to create a source. Oh dear. Sorry about that. That is not... It defaulted to display capture, which certainly was not what I was trying to do. This. It's, of course, not perfect because I wasn't planning on sharing this, but because Iron Trap brought it up, we're going staring into infinity and beyond. I'm not even sure where I grabbed this from, because I saved it in a Word document in March of last year. But these are the different types of ships of the Civil War. So you have sloops of war, schooners, screw sloops, let's see, steam frigates. That's one of those steam frigates, I think. Yeah. The double ender. Paddle steamers. Timber-clad gunboat. And then, of course, aircraft carriers. And I love their preface, no joke. Aircraft carriers. We did talk about, very briefly, we came across information about the first aircraft carriers, which were used to transport and launch hot air balloons. Ironclads. Casemate ironclads. We haven't encountered one of those yet. Monitors? Oh, monitor class ironclads. I see. Okay. Submarines. Because the very first submarine to sink an enemy vessel in combat was the CSS Hunley, which we did an entire episode on. But yeah, so this is... I'm going to need to investigate where I got this from, because it's a good reference. I just don't know where I grabbed the info from. So, you know, we'll get there eventually. Anyway, how about we actually look at the journal. Because I have digressed enough. Second cup of coffee. The brain cell is starting to wake up. I know that feeling. Okay, let's... Document view? What? We're going to show documents on the historical documents stream? What are we? A professional streamer? I mean, I suppose technically, yes? One could say that we are a professional streamer. What? Oh, I was like, what is that behind me? It's the mouse pad. I'm having it. Professional something, yeah. Okay. I'm trying to make sure I can actually still see the screen, but right now the arm of the stand for the camera is between my eyes and the chat. Okay. The steel part of it is what put you off, because it was a steel sloop. For some reason, you weren't equating sloops with rigged sailing ships and steel hull with steam-powered ships. Oh. Gotcha. Okay, so. The box. The box we had already. So, in here, we have the treatment report from the conservators. So I thought that it would be interesting to look at their report of what they did as part of doing some preservation work on this journal. Okay. This is interesting to you as the journal itself? Yes. I would love it. Like, honestly, if we had facilities and expertise to do conservation work here, that would be a wonderful thing to stream. We don't. So if we need extensive conservation work on something, we send it out to have it done professionally. That said, if you are interested in that type of content, might I recommend a YouTube channel called Baumgartner Restoration. It's art-focused, but it would be similar. So it's not going to be like documents, but it's really neat, the conservation work that they do and the streams that he does. All right, so for the text block, surface cleaning as needed with latex sponges. They did deacidification non-aqueously with magnesium oxide. They sprayed the pages with Bookkeeper, which it's capitalized, so I assume that is a name brand product that is magnesium oxide. Paper mended using Japanese tissue. So we'll see if we can find some of the spots where they mended some of the paper. Hi, Neogets. Guarded sections using Japanese tissue. Resewn. Full. So one of the things that you might notice in some of the videos from last year, basically the covers were not attached anymore to the journal. For the most part, the pages were still together, but the covers were not fully attached. I honestly don't remember exactly the extent to which that was a problem. When they say they resewn full, they reattached. They resewed all the pages and basically rebuilt the book into codex form. Which, that is a jargon term, if you're not familiar. So, you're probably familiar with papyrus and scrolls, or with what we think of today as books. Well, books with the covers and the various pages between them that you can open and flip from page to page, technically that format is called a codex, as opposed to a scroll. So a scroll could also be referred to as a book, where we have the pages and the covers and whatnot. That's a codex. Rebacked, toned Japanese paper, toned with watercolors and colored pencils. Joint repair, inner Japanese tissue hinges laid down. Restoration of original binding, marbled paper laid down where separated from boards, toned Japanese paper repairs along 4 edges and corners. Comments. The rear marbled paper detached when lifted at spine edge during treatment, and so was removed and lined with colored Japanese paper. Since the original flyleaf was missing and the original paste down was stained from water damage, it was decided to tip on a new dove gray machine-made end paper at the rear of the text block. New paste down adhered. Clusal G and SC 6000 overall. I don't know exactly what that means. Restored volume returned to the enclosure in which it arrived, which was brushed clean. And so it looks like they finished or did that work in October, but we got this back at the end of December. So yeah, the box already existed. They just cleaned it. It also had this blue sort of cover that's to protect the journal. And then this is the journal itself. SC6000 is an audio mixer, but that seems unlikely to be relevant here. Probably not relevant. So the cover itself is the same cover. I'm gonna reposition, but you can see it has a complete binding now. And I'm uncertain. I don't remember. I would have to go back and refer to previous videos. I don't remember if the corners were like that before. I honestly just don't remember. I assume so because they didn't mention anything specifically about those. But otherwise, like, this is the interior that was the interior of the opening. I'm lifting it up, and I know it's going to be weird and difficult, but this along here, this is some of the Japanese tissue that they used to reattach. It'll be easier if I can find a spot where, like, some of the pages were torn, and I'm not certain where they specifically had to do those repairs. I haven't had a chance to investigate. But if we come across one, we can talk about it. So we've got... There was no back before. Like, the back cover existed, but it was not in any way attached before. There used to be those corner bits, but they'd worn off before we started. Gotcha. Yeah, because it struck me as, like, looking at them, they seemed like they were... I didn't remember them. And there's also... I can feel that it's slightly raised. As though they pulled up and put underneath. I don't know. It looks amazing, though. Okay, so this... we haven't gotten to this part yet. This is just basically a magazine article that was put in that like tucked in at the end. They have so they sewed it together and added Japanese tissue paper, deacidified it because this was probably acidic paper. But there's a line of Japanese tissue paper all along the edge here, and then they've sewed the pieces together so that the pages, which were just sort of in here and loose, and you can see as the light shines through, the inner edge where they had been torn was deteriorating and starting to crumble. And so they've repaired that with Japanese tissue paper and rebound this by sewing it together into so that it's a coherent turnable page subsection of Harper's Weekly, because this was basically just an article from Harper's Weekly that they had inserted. Which I assume Peltz took that from Harper's Weekly himself. The handwriting seems to be his, but we haven't quite gotten there yet because that's toward the end of the journal. Yeah, it's just it's in such lovely condition now. It was really fragile before, and it feels much more sturdy now, and like I feel like I'm okay now with once I'm done using it regularly. If people came in and wanted to regularly consult this piece and access it over time, I have no concerns now about people coming in and using it, because the conservation work has made it more sturdy and just so that it will last longer now. If I had a time machine and couldn't just tell 18-year-old me to buy Microsoft and Apple, I would give myself a solid nudge into the direction of archivist / document restoration. Honestly, it would be amazing. Like, I know of, I've been to and visited the library at the University of Iowa, and they have conservation facilities there, and I'm kind of jealous because I would love to do that. We just don't have the facilities here. But they also, there's a reason they have facilities there, and that's partly because they have the center for the book. Like they have an entire program at the university there focused on sort of the art of the book, and their literature programs tie into it, and so then their archival and document restoration stuff also ties in, because there's some synergy there. Okay, so who remembers what we were talking about in July in this journal? I say as I realize I don't, but I can find out fairly quickly. I know that page 46 was the next page we had not looked at, because I left myself a post-it note in July. So I have the transcription that I've been working on, and I'm gonna look and see what was on page 45. All right. 45. I will read through Tuesday, July 22nd, really quickly. And just to get us into the new stuff, we'll just cover very quickly the stuff from the previous page. How's that? Okay. Tuesday, July 22nd. Weighed anchor this morning early and left Norfolk. Came up the James River until we were approaching Jamestown Island when we ran ashore through the awkwardness of the pilot. Got off as soon as the tide ran up sufficiently to float us. Came to just above the island for the night. The stepping stone rendered some aid in getting us off, voluntarily offered. The Stepping Stone is actually a ship called the Stepping Stones, and it was a ferry. Wednesday, July 23rd, we now lay within sight of City Point and are now one of the ram fleet ready to run down the Merrimack No. 2, which is the CSS Richmond at this point in time. The Merrimack 2 is a confusing appellation, but given the date, it's the CSS Richmond. As her dimensions are much inferior to those of her prototype, we apprehended no difficulty in meeting her. The Galena and Monitor are our colleagues in expectation of the enemy, while there are many gunboats a few miles down the river protecting the army from an attack by land. Saturday, July 26th. So this is where I will focus in on the document and we'll go from here. And all I know about what's happening coming up in the journal, because I'm way ahead of this point in the journal as far as the transcription work I'm doing, so I don't remember what's going on. All I really know is what was in the title of the episode. Which, of course, now that I say, I don't remember. 1 second. The full and complete title of the episode. Off Harrison's Landing after the 7 days battles. It seemed like the best description I could come up with at the time. So, let's find out. Shall we? Alright, Saturday, July 26th. Last night, one schooner was burned near Harrison's Landing, loaded with damaged corn. This was supposed to have been the work of some incendiary... This was supposed to have been the work of some incendiaries of disloyal proclivities. Her captain disappeared at the same time. Whether he has gone over to the other side or whether he was burned on board, no one seems to know. All as yet seems somewhat of an enigma. We brought to a small sailboat standing in for the rebel shore and brought the men consisting of 4 on board. They proved their innocence of desertion, so they were sent back to their regiment. Or to their regiment. Several flags of truce passed us today, but no prisoners came down. The rebels were quite discernible at City Point from our vessel. Quite a long train of cars arrived. Cars? That's not cars. Quite a long train of something arrived. This is why having a transcription on hand becomes useful. No, it says cars. I'm trying to brain what... Yeah, train cars. Thank you. It's my brain halted in trying to parse cars in 1862 as well. But yeah, train cars makes perfect sense. Anyway, quite a long train of cars arrived. And persons running in every direction. The point seems very lively. What it means, we have yet to learn. We were slightly alarmed this afternoon from the report that 3 rebel steamers were coming down the river. Soon we were in readiness for them. Long we waited for their appearance. We gave it up finally in disgusted disappointment. We had hoped for a run at the 2nd Merrimack, Richmond. We have noticed several pickets directly opposite to our anchorage, thus demonstrating the vigilance of the rebels in their diabolical war or rebellion. I like his phrasing. Rebel steamers just makes me want a steampunk remake of Star Wars. Oh, that sounds that would be really interesting. Wednesday, January 30th. Or January. Sorry, it started with a J and we're in January, so my brain naturally... Alright, Wednesday, July 30th. Nothing of much importance has occurred since I last wrote on the 26th. We have taken on board several contrabands who came down to the beach and begged to be taken on board. Sometimes they would be possessed with passes from their owners. At the same time, the pass would read so that the picket's attention would be drawn to the lookout for them for fear of their being inclined to join the Yankees. So if you are unfamiliar, contrabands is a term that was in use at the time. And these would be people who had escaped from slavery, and it was not uncommon for people who had escaped from slavery to seek out the Union Army in order to join up, or to just escape from the South. So he's talking about they had taken on board several contrabands, and apparently they sometimes had passes from their owners. So they apparently had been sent on some errand or such. That also, if they encountered Confederate pickets, that pass would have warned them to be on the lookout and watch out to make sure that this, because they were suspected of, there was a suspicion that they would try to seek out the Union Army, the Yankees. And so their pass from their owners would tell the Confederate pickets to prevent that. That's what I'm reading there. And we're going to have some historical terms. In fact, in the next sentence, there is a term that is no longer in active use today. And so, as has been the case for the 4 years, rather than reading the word as it appears, you can see it on the screen. I will replace it with modern language. So the black people not being able to read were not aware of the contents of the pass. When these fellows were closely interrogated as to what their motive was in running off, they only seemed to think that their condition could not be any worser. Worse. This is him trying to write down dialect. Let's see. So they would try it anyhow. Some left their wives and families. Some left their wives and families behind through their great eagerness to leave their state of bondage. Every day brings some new reports as to the immediate attack by the enemy, both by water and by land. Yesterday we received an account Yesterday we received an accurate sketch of the Merrimack, number 2, now building at it should be Richmond. It looks like Rickmond. Yeah, no, it's Richmond. Of course it is. The extra knowledge required just to read texts from the 1800s really highlights how much we're likely to have misunderstood in older texts. Yeah, I mean, a lot of this I didn't know when we first encountered the word contraband, which I think we encountered it in a previous passage on stream and did the research then. But prior to encountering it in this journal, I was unaware of that term and the context of it, etc. And I continue to come across terminology as I work through correcting the transcription that I was unfamiliar with and have to go and look up and find out. Because the language has drifted over time. Yesterday we received an accurate sketch of the Merrimack, number 2, now building at Richmond. It came through a reliable source, and I think it can be relied upon. She is supposed to be completed, or nearly so. This afternoon, a number of gunboats drew up below us, ready for I'm uncertain what this word is. Repelling the enemy? I think it's repelling, but oh, Key Squared, thank you for joining. Shelling, thank you. Repelling didn't quite make sense because there was only one letter, but I knew this was a P. I knew the second letter was a P. Yes, Matt. Ready for shelling the enemy. Should they attempt an attack upon the land forces. Balloons are sent up daily to ascertain the position of the enemy. Commodore Miller I know I looked this person up. Commodore. Yeah, I knew it wasn't Miller. I remember this one took a bit. Commodore Wilkes. At first glance, at least to me, that looks like Miller. But it is, in fact, Wilkes. That had to have taken me at least an hour to figure out that name by doing searches of people who had the rank Commodore around 1862. And yeah, anyway. Commodore Wilkes has again returned to the flotilla, and we are no longer the commanding party. Papers are in great demand, and the mail very irregular. Weather, hot and sultry. I'm trying to remember. I know So, I'm going to see if I can pull up who this Commodore Wilkes was. Because, of course, I don't have those notes. All right, Commodore Wilkes. Reading cursive is a skill you're sorely lacking, and especially the letters that modern simple cursive has shifted, like R and N, etc. Thanks to type. Yeah. And reading cursive is not is not even really taught in a lot of schools in the US anymore. So we often have to provide instruction in how to read cursive for our student employees, because they're starting college and they've never had to read cursive before. But learning to read 19th century cursive, I had to do, and I knew cursive from elementary school, but I still had to learn how to read 19th century cursive because it's different. And sometimes you just need to learn the person's handwriting because everybody's handwriting is different and how they do things is different. And so sometimes if I'm uncertain of something, I will look for the same letter form used elsewhere to parse out the letters of a word so that I can figure out what it says. So he's referring to Commodore Wilkes. And of course, Wikipedia, not a bad source for just general information. We wouldn't want to cite it, but for just some basic primer information on who the heck was this person, it's probably okay. Charles Wilkes, born April 3rd, 1798, died February 8th, 1877. American naval officer, ship's captain, and explorer. Led the U.S. exploring expedition. That's way too early for this. During the American Civil War, he commanded the USS San Jacinto during the Trent Affair, in which he stopped a Royal Mail ship and removed 2 Confederate diplomats, which almost led to war between the US and the UK. Interesting. Narragansett Bay. South Seas Expedition. Apparently the South Seas Expedition in the 1830s was commonly known as the Wilkes Expedition. Departing from Hampton Roads. Okay, but we want the Civil War. Civil War. promoted to the rank of commander in 1843 and that of captain in 1855. So by 1862, he's a commodore. Always amazed when you see people reading like old birth registers and census full of varied handwriting. I'm just like, how? Practice. He was assigned to command USS San Jacinto and search for the Confederate commerce destroyer CSS Sumter. The Trent Affair. As part of these duties, he visited the British colony of Bermuda in 1861, remained in port for nearly a week aboard his flagship, the USS Wachusett, which I know that ship gets mentioned in the journal a few times, violating the British rule that allowed American naval vessels of either side to remain in port for only a single day. While Wilkes remained in port, his gunboats, USS Tioga and USS Sonoma, blockaded St. George's Harbor, a key Confederate blockade runner base. The gunboats opened fire at the RMS Merlin. When Wilkes learned that James Murray Mason and John Slidell, two Confederate commissioners to Britain and France respectively, were bound for England on a British packet boat, RMS Trent, he ordered the steam frigate San Jacinto to stop them. On November 8, 1861, San Jacinto met Trent, fired 2 shots across its bow, forcing the ship to stop. A party from San Jacinto, led by its captain, then boarded Trent and arrested Mason and Slidell, a further violation of British neutrality. The diplomats were taken to Fort Warren in Boston Harbor. The actions of the notorious Wilkes, as Bermuda media branded him, were contrary to maritime law and convinced many that full-scale war between the US and England was inevitable. Hi, Puddleglum! I hope you're enjoying your work, Lurk. He was officially thanked by Congress for his brave, adroit, and patriotic conduct. However, his action was later disavowed by President Lincoln due to diplomatic protests by the British government. Mason and Slidell were released. His next service was in the James River Flotilla, and he was placed on the retired list on December 21st, 1861. So the James River Flotilla is the blockade. That is what the Dacotah is part of at this point in time. And you'll note, he was placed on the retired list about, 7 months before the entry that we are reading. But then, subsequently, after reaching the rank of Commodore on July 16th, 1862, he was assigned to duty against blockade runners in the West Indies. So, he retired just before Christmas in 1861, but somehow between then and July 16th of 1862, he was brought back into active service and promoted to the rank of Commodore and put in charge of the West Indies Squadron. And so that would be the role he is in at the point in time that this journal entry was written. Now, the Dacotah is not part of the West Indies Squadron, but it's interesting. As commander of the West Indies Squadron, Wilkes repeatedly complained of having an insufficient force. He twice seconded to his own fleet ships ordered to other duties, even in spite of direct orders to release them. Though he had a degree of success in the capture of blockade runners, in which he profited personally, he drew criticism for failing in his primary task, the capture of the commerce raiders CSS Alabama and CSS Florida. He also repeatedly exacerbated diplomatic relations with the British, Spanish, Dutch, French, Danes, and Mexicans through his arrogant and illegal activities in the West Indies and Bermuda. Now I really want to know what happened in that gap. It's probably as simple as being asked to take up a post again, but the mystery calls to me. Yeah, and I don't know. And it's possible that people have tried to add that information and it's been removed, because if there is no citation, oftentimes the information doesn't get to stay in Wikipedia. It will disappear very fast. And so people just might not have made the effort to find citable sources for it to add that information. But yeah, that would be an interesting question to research. In violation of international law regarding belligerent nations, he established coal depots on a number of neutral islands and frequently illegally hovered outside of neutral ports. The British accused him of establishing virtual blockades of the ports of Nassau and St. George's, where his arrogant behavior even led to suspicions that he had been sent to intentionally insult the British, while the French similarly accused him of effectively blockading Martinique. Wilkes justified his actions by calling the ports little short of operational bases for blockade runners. His capture of ships such as the Peterhoff, Dolphin, Springbok, and Victor resulted in diplomatic remonstrations explicitly directed against Wilkes. He was recalled from his West Indies command in June 1863, a consequence of multiple factors. His failure to capture the Confederate commerce raiders certainly played a role, and his retention of the USS Vanderbilt in direct contravention of explicit orders to release it to independently hunt the Alabama served as a justification. But he probably owed his removal primarily to the seeming never-ending stream of complaints from neutral nations over his actions. And apparently he was court-martialed in December of 1863. He seems like a character worthy of some research. But he's not specifically in this journal, other than that he appeared. So he's not the focus today. But I just thought it was interesting to look him up. Okay, Commodore Wilkes has again returned to the flotilla, and we are no longer the commanding party. Papers are in great demand, and the mail very irregular. Weather hot and sultry. We've reached August of 1862. Friday, August 1st. This morning, at 1 o'clock, I was aroused by the sound of cannon. Upon getting on deck, I learned that the enemy had attacked our transports opposite Hello, words. Opposite Harrison's Landing. Harrison's Landing. I don't know why that was so difficult for me. Oh, and we have the answer. Hello! Welcome in, 16-Bit Eric. Hello, Whimsies. Welcome to the stream. All 42 of you. Bringing the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Welcome. It is great to see you. Pretty Witchery, I totally understand. Thank you for popping in. Welcome. I am Rogan27. I'm also known as Anthony Wright de Hernandez. I am the Community Collections Archivist at Virginia Tech, and this is my Wednesday show where we look at historical documents from the archives here. So thank you. Welcome. I hope that you find something you enjoy. If anybody here watching was not already following 16-Bit Eric, I encourage you heartily to do so. Eric is a wonderful streamer with an amazing community, and you definitely should just drop a follow if you're not already, because you won't regret it. Hi, Story Girl. I've gone all beardy. Yeah, I think it started in like September, just cause. Hi, Castabras. So if you're returning, you might recall that for the first half of last year, we were reading through the personal journal of the chief engineer of the USS Dacotah, a Union naval vessel from the American Civil War. And about midway through the year, I got the opportunity to send the journal off to the conservators for some restoration work. And it returned at the end of December. And so we are picking it back up and continuing with the USS Dacotah. Hi, Blue Rooster. So yeah, we're continuing with the journal. It has been to the conservators. The covers are fully attached now. It's had some repair work done to some of the pages with Japanese tissue paper. There's some deacidification work that was done. Just generally, it is in much better condition than it was in before, meaning that it will be around for people to use and consult for years to come. So we've just reached Friday, August 1st. And we're somewhere... We're near Harrison's Landing. That's all I know. Somewhere on the James River, probably. I would have to look up the geography to be certain. If anybody wants to check where Harrison's Landing is and confirm, that would be appreciated. But this morning at 1 o'clock, I was aroused by the sound of cannon. Upon getting on deck, I learned that the enemy had attacked our transports opposite Harrison's Landing. They opened with about 20 pieces of light artillery and kept up an incessant fire for about 20 minutes. For the time the fire was sharp, I accidentally paused the music. For the time the fire was sharp, as soon as one gun brat opened upon them, skedaddling was the order of the night, and soon nothing was to be seen of them or heard. As we could not see any particular motive in opening on our transports, protected with the gun brats, the impression was that it was a feint, and a much greater attack would soon take place. Hi, Shadows of Life. This is 1862. August of 1862, Blue Rooster. However, we were disappointed. Morning came without any further trouble. A force was landed this afternoon on the opposite side of the river, and the brush and obstructions in a measure burned away to prevent the rebel pickets from taking shelter in a manner that they can discern nearly everything that is going on among us. Saturday, August 2nd. Some little firing down the river, but of little damage to us. An attack is expected tonight from the rebels, both by water and land. We may see Merrimack number 2 before morning. Several transports have gone to and fro with flags of truce. Some promises have been exchanged. One of them, quite a number of children were to be seen coming from City Point. A portion of McClellan's forces have been landed of the south side of James River. phrasing in some of those sentences just confuses me a little. Some prisoners have been exchanged, one of them quite a number of children. It's the punctuation that's throwing me. Several transports have gone to and fro with flags of truce. Some prisoners have been exchanged. One of them, quite a number of children, were to be seen coming from City Point. I think he means one of the transports had a bunch of children on it. I'm uncertain, though. Sunday, August 3rd. The expected attack did not take place as expected. Yes, I do have a ghost hand. It's a bandage. It's just, it green screens out there. I lost my... Okay. The expected attack did not take place as expected. Farther than a few guns from City Point and the neighborhood. Our gun brats that went up in that direction immediately responded and soon silenced them. The Galena got underway and went to their assistance. While we, drawing in much water, were compelled to lay dormant and look at the fight only. Built today a poop deck over the wheel to protect the men from sharpshooters. The top of it was covered with thick boilerplate. One shot sent through a tug. Monday, August 4th. Visited by several Army officers. Among them, I think I spent probably 2 hours figuring out this name when I was working on the transcription. Visited by several Army officers. Among them, Colonel Sweitzer, who informed us of flags of truce that intended to carry 8,000 rebel prisoners to City Point tonight. So I did manage to figure out who Colonel Sweitzer is. See what I can bring up about him. Ouch. And we'll bring this up on screen for y'all. Okay. So I just trying to figure out what the letters were. And then I also try to, whenever there's a name, whether it's a vessel or a person, as I'm going through correcting the transcription, I'm adding a clarification about specifics if I'm able to find them. So Colonel Sweitzer, who he refers to in this passage, is Jacob B. Sweitzer. Jacob Bowman Sweitzer, born July 4th, 1821, died November 7th, 1888, a Pennsylvania lawyer and soldier who commanded a regiment and then a brigade in the Army of the Potomac in the American Civil War. He and his men were significantly engaged at the 1863 Battle of Gettysburg, where they reinforced and helped temporarily stabilize the Union defensive line on the second day of fighting. However, we're not in 1863 yet. We're in 1862. We're in early August of 1862. So Sweitzer was named a major in the 62nd Pennsylvania Infantry on July 4th, 1861, and then he became a lieutenant colonel on November 17th of 1861, and was promoted to colonel June 27th of 1862. He served in the 7 Days Battles, being wounded and captured at the Battle of Gaines' Mill. And then he was exchanged officially August 15th, 1862. Oh, no, after being exchanged. On August 15th, 1862, he led his regiment to the 1st Division, 5th Corps at the Second Battle of Bull Run, and at Antietam in the brigade of Brigadier General Charles Griffin. So, the 7 Days Battles has relevance here because Sweitzer was wounded and captured during the 7 Days Battles. And here it's noted that he shows up bearing flags of truce, and there's an actual historical moment happening. All right, the 7 Days Battles, a series of 7 battles over 7 days from June 25th to July 1st of 1862. They happened near Richmond, Virginia. Robert E. Lee drove the Army of the Potomac Lee drove McClellan away from Richmond and into retreat down the Virginia Peninsula. It was the culmination of the Peninsula Campaign, which everything we've read in this journal so far is happening concurrent with the Peninsula Campaign. So the blockade that we're reading about is the water operations, and the Peninsula Campaign was what was happening on land. Whoops. So I'm not going to go through all of it, but I do want to find... I don't know if this article will have it or if I'll have to look somewhere else. I wanted to find something about the prisoner exchange that we are just getting to. Hi, it's probably okay. Union withdrawal. Savage Station. Yeah, this article is just covering all of the different battles, which makes sense since it's an article about the 7 battles. Aftermath. The 7 Days Battles ended the Peninsula Campaign. But do we get as far as August? We do not. Okay, I'll find it. How long did the 7 Days Battle take? Well, it was the 7 Days Battles because it was 7 battles over 7 days. I went too far back. All right. Oh, of course I did that. And yeah, the battles were, it was a succession of battles. Over the course of 7 days, Robert E. Lee pushed McClellan's forces down the Virginia Peninsula and away from Richmond. Don't know if this will get me what I want or not. Nope, that's 1864. It's Harrison's Landing. 1862, Harrison's Landing, prisoner exchange. Okay, this is jumping a little bit into the future. Yes. I really would prefer not to sign on right now. I'm busy doing other things. And I know that there's a resource that will not require me to log into the New York Times. Very original naming convention. So like the 12 Days of Christmas, 7 Days of Violence-mas. Oh no. I don't know what happened. Oh. Yeah, no, there's... Thank you. Thank you, moderator, for taking care of that. Okay. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. But we still have a half an hour, so I'm going to look. Because I know I came across it when I was trying to figure out who Sweitzer was. No, we hit September. Okay. Paroled prisoners. French leave. Camp Chase. That's not it. That's not the one. Aha! I found it. Moobot did its job and then you did... Ooh, thank you. It's probably okay. And thank you, Hannah. Okay. City Point Prisoner Exchange, 1862 to 1864. This is of relevance. This is actually from an army website. It's goordnance.army.mil and in their history section. But City Point Prisoner Exchange, 1862 to 1864. Beginning in August of 1862, we just reached August 4th. City Point served as a point of exchange for prisoners of war. After a brief lull during the early fall, the exchanges resumed in November and continued until May of 1864. Regular train service brought Union prisoners almost daily in exchange for Confederates shipped upriver from Fort Monroe. To accommodate the prisoner layovers and exchanges, the Confederate Army established a camp with an officer in charge, a surgeon, medical supplies, and a commissary and quartermaster depot. By May of 1864, this flag of truce station had only a score or so men for guard duty. It was just like a regular thing. Like, oh, yep, we captured people. And so where we're stationed right now, where the part of the journal that we're at, they're pulled up just off City Point, opposite Harrison's Landing. And the prisoner exchanges, the prisoner parole and exchange process that will go on for 2 more years and become a regular thing here, hasn't actually started yet. And so his journal entry here, visited by several Army officers, and this was after him talking about how there's been a lot of activity and they don't know what's going on. Visited by several Army officers, among them Colonel Sweitzer, who informed us of flags of truce that intended to carry 8,000 rebel prisoners to City Point tonight. This he visited by several army officers, among them Colonel Sweitzer. Well, Sweitzer had been taken prisoner a month before. And so he was sent by the Confederates to deliver a message about the intention to, under flag of truce, carry 8,000 Union soldiers that had been taken prisoner by the Confederacy to City Point, and that those 8,000 people were going to arrive that night. The object, no doubt, is to prevent them from seeing our situation or position. Supply of ice is stopped, owing to the ice schooner being exhausted. Weather very warm and sultry. The south field still aground above City Point. Ran ashore by a miserable pilot who was taken from our vessel after having run us on shore twice. All the other vessel have returned, save the Galena, to this old anchorage. So, other than him just noting that some army officers came under flag of truce, one of them was Colonel Sweitzer, who had been taken prisoner a month before, and that there were going to be Confederate forces that were going to be bringing 8,000 prisoners to City Point, and what he took from it was that the reason they were being told was so that their situation would not be then observed by the Confederates, and they could take precautions to remain strategically positioned, etc. And then he goes on to talk about, like, it's been warm. And he's commented, warm and sultry, warm and sultry. And so the ice schooner, the ship that brought ice to provide ice to the other ships on the fleet, ran out of ice. Not great to run out of ice in early August. And then he also notes that the South Field ran aground because the pilot was the same pilot that ran the Dacotah aground twice and then was removed from the Dacotah. Hi, I'm Marioathon 1999. I'm sure I got it wrong. Marioathon, maybe? Hi, welcome in. It's great to see you, and thank you for the self-care. Thank you for the follow. I will indeed get some water. So I just... This journal just continues to provide really interesting content. The next entry jumps forward 3 days. So we move forward to Thursday, August 7th. If I'm reading this correctly. Yeah. Shannon, thank you for the bit. So apparently, they said 8,000 would be arriving on the 4th. Apparently, they didn't get there till the 6th. Because he says, yesterday, 8,000 rebel prisoners were sent up in exchange for the same number of hours. Our boys, as they passed us last evening, they kept up one continuous cheering. They seemed very jubilant upon their release, uh, and gave considerable vent to it in various ways. The South Field is now off and is taking in coal close by us. We are out of all trouble from grounding. A reconnaissance was made up to and in the neighborhood of Malvern Hill. Since 300 rebels were captured, together with a battery of light artillery. A large number of contrabands are now engaged throwing embankments on the south side of the James. They are covered by a large force from the army and the gun brats. For anybody who wasn't here earlier or doesn't know, contrabands is a term that was in use during the American Civil War. It refers to enslaved people who ran away and joined the Union Army. And so he notes that a large number of them were working on putting embankments on the south side of the James River. And they were being protected by the army. A reconnaissance was made to the southward. Some rebel property was captured, and a number cavalry routed. From there, I'm going to refer to the transcription that they're mentioned heavily in the movie Glory. I haven't seen Glory, so I would not have known that, but thank you, because now I have to watch Glory. What is this word? It's funny because I have been through all of these pages. I'm working ahead in correcting the transcription. And yet, reading it, I still encounter words that I'm like, I have no idea what that word is, even though I know that I have worked it out before. Cavalry routed. Respective. Of course. Makes total sense. It just did not initially look like the word respective. It also is easier to read it when I'm looking at the page rather than at the screen. Anyway, cavalry routed from their respective hiding places. Glory's a true story of the 54th Massachusetts in the Civil War. Oh, and they were one of the regiments with people of color. I know I've heard of the movie. In the past, I did not watch a lot of like war movies. My dad did though. But recently I've watched a number of them. I just hadn't gone into like Civil War era yet. I lost my place. Okay. We learned from the attack at City Point and vicinity that our boats done considerable damage to the rebels and killed quite a number. It is wonderful to see how our shrapnel slaughter the enemy. No wonder they skedaddle at the report only of our 11-incher. Inchers. "11 inchers" would be referring to the type of gun. See if I can get a picture. Well, the picture here is of a 13-incher, but it would be similar. So this is from from a Wikipedia article on siege artillery in the American Civil War. This is a 13-incher. So basically just really big mortars. I don't know if there's going to be a picture of an 11-incher. 8 and 10-inch siege mortars, 13-inch. Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a picture here of an 11-incher. But this would be 10-inchers. So apparently on the ship they had some 11-inchers. And he felt that the sound of their 11-inchers was enough to cause the rebels to skedaddle. It is now very warm, the mercury standing at 94 degrees in the shade. To add to our condition, we are out of ice. And the deer only knows when we will get any more. Fresh meat is very scarce. None on hand. And no signs of getting any. Come on, refocus. Our sick list is increasing every day. A short sea voyage would set us all right. Otherwise, I fear that our efficiency will be much impaired. So, it's now up to 94 degrees in the shade. They don't have any ice. They don't have any meat. And people are getting sick. Sounds like a recipe for low morale. Which I agree would probably lead to diminished efficiency. Monday, August 11th. Yesterday, we succeeded in getting a lot of ice. So, how long was it? The previous entry was on the 7th. So, 4 days later. So 3 days later, they got ice on the 10th. Yesterday, we succeeded in getting a lot of ice, thereby thereby alleviating our condition as far as a cool voyage is concerned. We have sent out two foraging parties. The first obtained corn in great quantities, together with 2 calves and a sheep. The second procured 1 large heifer, a pig, and much corn. You see, we are now in good style. A salute was fired by the army of 34 guns in honor of ex-President Van Buren. We are all ordered to wear crepe for 6 months on our left arms. For 1 week, all the flags in this squadron are to be kept half-mast for esteem and as a token of the appreciation we have for the deceased ex-president of the U.S. Here today in shade, 92 degrees. Yesterday, 95 degrees. So this is former President Van Buren has died, and they're supposed to wear crepe on their left arm. So basically a black ribbon on their left arm for 6 months. You long for 95-degree weather? Honestly, I'll take a few of those degrees, because it's really cold here right now, and my office is really cold. But I think I still prefer the cold to 95 degrees myself. But whatever. To each their own. Tuesday, August 12th. Went this morning on a foraging expedition. As fresh meat was sent up from Norfolk, we did not kill any bullocks. We captured a couple of small pigs, roasting ears of corn, etc. We procured a few eggs, chickens, and milk. The temp was pleasant, the air salubrious. Nothing could I have enjoyed had the grass been a little drier more. That's a frustrating parenthetical, but nothing could I have enjoyed had the grass been a little drier more. Reordering it to be more comprehensible, had the grass been a little drier, he could not have enjoyed anything more. The wharves and some of the buildings at City Point were burnt today by the rebels. I presume they expect us, the gunboat Yankee, and one or two others. It's a comma, but it's a period, because he uses commas as periods, which was apparently common at the time, to interchange the two. The wharves and some of the buildings at City Point were burnt today by the rebels. I presume they expect us. The gunboat Yankee and one or two others shelled the southern shore just above Harrison's Landing and below us. No particular issue from the action. A number of transports conveyed a number of our troops down the river last night. I expect en route for Yorktown. All McClellan's army is expected below, and no doubt will go to Yorktown, thereby change the base of operation of the Peninsula Army. Word order in English is strange sometimes. Strange English word order is... or strange English word order sometimes is. Yeah. All McClellan's army is expected below, and no doubt will go to Yorktown, thereby change the base of operation of the Peninsula Army. Received on board one contraband. He tell his tale like all the others. This fellow says he left his master to avoid a flogging, the provocation not being sufficiently great to warrant it, according to his according, I think it's explanation, but it doesn't look like explanation. Let me see. How did I... Received on board today. Estimation. It's estimation. The provocation not being sufficiently great to warrant it, according to his estimation, he thought he would skedaddle. I learned that the plantation from which we foraged has lost some 200 black people. They are now with the army, digging trenches. I'm sure other languages are similarly annoying if you know them, but our number of parent languages sure shows. Yeah, Neoguts. So, apparently, the report from the escaped former enslaved person was that the plantation that he had fled from has lost 200 enslaved people, and that they're now here with the Union Army digging trenches. Saturday, August 16th. So we're jumping ahead again by 4 days. For several days, the Army of the Potomac has been leaving Harrison's Landing and going down James River. Our entire force has now left the landing. The last ones left today. Their destination is no doubt Slaughter Mountain, or somewhere on or near the Rappahannock. The Navy is now left to itself. A movement is expected every day. We are all in some suspense and hope for a move. Received on board one more contraband. As he was not very intelligent, no important news was gleaned. He underlined the word intelligent, and I don't really understand why. But not knowing the person he's referring to, I can't say whether it was a reasonable assessment of the person or not. Monday, August 18th. Very little news today. Some shelling of the rebels by our gunboats opposite to Harrison's Landing. I presume no one was killed. The rebels are moving around the neighboring hills and keeping at us, no doubt, to glean all they can in reference to the sudden disappearance of the army. Our foraging for the present is suspended. So then we go from what was that? That was the 18th. And we jump forward to Saturday, August 23rd, 1862. This will be the last entry that we read today, because we're nearing the end of time, and because this takes the full 2 pages and leaves us fresh to start on page 54 next month. We are still at the old anchorage near City Point. Contrabands continue to come on board every few days, generally forward them to the army. The Commodore is now at the fortress, making preparations to advance upon Fort Darling. What the result may be will be decided upon at the battle. City Point, Wednesday, August 27th. Okay, so yeah, whatever. We'll do these 2 pages. City Point, Wednesday, August 27th, 1862. Weighed anchor this morning and left Harrison's Landing. In a short time thereafter, we came to anchor at this place. meaning City Point. We lay at the junction of the Appomattox and the James Rivers, so that there exists no possible chance for the rebels to have any communication with Petersburg by water from Richmond. City Point presents a dilapidated condition. The majority of the buildings being entirely destroyed, while all the others appear to have suffered considerable damage. The wharves and warehouses are demolished. Not one individual is to be seen. Even the black people have left. I cannot see any object gained by this move, save stopping any possible communication by the water between Richmond and Petersburg. Tomorrow is the day for the arrival of the fresh meat and ice boat. Although this thing is a swindling concern, we embrace it it's just very poorly written. I know what it says. We embrace it as a drowning does a chip. That's what it says. We embrace it, a drowning does a chip. It is supposed to say we embrace it as a drowning man does a ship, but some letters and words are missing. And hail her as the messenger and bearer of fresh grub, etc. Our hopes of going to the Potomac with some of this squadron are now blasted. We must reconcile ourselves to laying here for several weeks, and possibly several months to come. Harrison's Landing, Thursday, August 28th. Weighed anchor this morning, and came down to this place, Harrison's Landing, which is where they left from a few days ago, after all the men of war had left, and our little tugboat was getting the small anchors belonging to the Wachusett, and used in getting the Wachusett clear from us, as she had dragged her anchor during the night. The rebels came down in large numbers, cavalry, infantry, and artillery, and attacked the tug. Soon the Monitor and Southfield were at the spot, when a general skedaddle commenced among the rebels. Several housed were destroyed. I'm uncertain. I guess several houses. The next day, Newport News. Friday, August 29th. Weighed anchor this morning at 11 o'clock and left the landing. The entire James River flotilla came down with us, leaving the river now to the rebels. Although our stay up the river has been short when compared with the Galena and Monitor, yet we are mighty glad to get once more out of the muddy water of the James. We feel already the exhilarating effect of this move's salubrious atmosphere, and hope soon to be on the deep blue sea, where we will be free from the miasma of the Chickahominy swamps. We came to anchor at this place at 7 o'clock. Our run down the river was slow owing to our being compelled to remain within the convoy. We noticed along the river, at intervals, the mortar schooners. They joined the flotilla as we came down. I have heard of my brother being commissioned as assistant surgeon in the Navy, dated the 22nd August, 1862. And that was, I mentioned earlier that in working on the transcription, I had seen something of his brother in the journal, and this is the mention of his brother. His brother, Navy surgeon. I actually found a document. I haven't had time to update the finding aid yet, but I found some info about his brother as well. Let's see. 1862 Navy surgeon Peltz. Yeah, it's funny because there was an auctioneer. There was an auction listing, not from where we bought this journal. So a previous listing for this journal that mentions his brother. Samuel H. Peltz is his brother, and was commissioned as a naval assistant surgeon and was appointed to the gunboat Chicora, Chocura, which that is useful information that I was actually able to verify outside of the auction listing. But that information was not part of the auction listing from when we purchased the journal. So it was just an interesting tidbit. Anyway, that is where we're going to leave the journal for today. They have left the region around Harrison's Landing and City Point. They've left the James River. The entire flotilla has left the river. They are now anchored at Newport News. And so when we return to the journal next month, I believe we will end up heading to the Bahamas. But I'll have to double check that to be certain, because I can't remember if there was something that happened before they go there. But it gets somewhat interesting. Like, not that it wasn't already interesting. It's, I don't know. I hope that you're all enjoying seeing the journal. I've had multiple people indicate that they're very happy that the journal is back. I'm happy the journal's back. And in having gone through to correct the transcription further into the future, because I'm trying to just finish that, I know some of the things that are coming up in the journal now, and it continues to be quite interesting. I'm learning so much. You love the journal streams? I do too. I'm after we finish this, I may just have to find something else that we can do similarly. I don't know what else we have, but I've enjoyed doing this as like a series. So we will be continuing. The next one should be the first Wednesday in February for this journal specifically. next week, I believe we have next week we'll be looking at Fate magazine, a mid-1950s pulp magazine from our the Heron Speculative Fiction collection. I don't know specifically which issues we're going to look at or what unique and interesting items my new student assistant has identified from it. So that'll be interesting. The journal's subtitle is Documenting the Strange and Unknown. So that'll be next week. And then the fifth entry in the classics of science fiction that we've been doing, that will be at the end of the month. So, yeah. It's all still a little up in the air because we're still just back in the office. But I enjoyed being able to share this with you today. I'm really happy to be back and starting year 5 of the stream. So thank you all so much for joining me. Let me see where we're going to raid. And I will have to consider the music before next week because given that I'm playing a channel called Chill, the present song feels a little out of place. Let's see where we're gonna go. Okay, we've got, Stephen Joyce is on. Nega Oryx is on. Paleontologizing is on. Space Valkyries is on. We've got some options today. Monterey Bay Aquarium. Video game or educational? I leave it up to you. Any preferences? Video game? Okay. We will hop on over to Stephen Joyce then. Stephen Joyce is a wonderful streamer, and I do encourage you all to join the raid and to say hello and spend a little time over there. It's a lovely community. Ask Stephen to put on a tiny hat for you. And you will not be disappointed. So, come on. My computer has done an annoyance. There we go. So yeah, we'll pop on over and say hi to Stephen and his community there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that all of you will be back again in the future, whether it be for one of the gaming streams on my personal channel or for more Archival adventures here on Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern Time this year. Yeah. Until I see you next, keep exploring history.